In ancient times, to know a name was to control that thing. In the ancient world, this was not a metaphor, it was a cosmic law. When a Babylonian priest chose which god to pray to, he was very careful about which of that god's 50 different names to invoke, because the wrong name opened the wrong door. In Egypt, a magician had to learn his enemy's true name before cursing him, otherwise the spell wouldn't work. Jewish priests could speak God's name only once a year, only one person, only in one place. The rest was forbidden. And a Norse god used different names constantly as he wandered the world, because speaking his true name meant surrendering his power. Why? Why had so many different cultures, unaware of each other, reached the same conclusion? Why was the name so important? And the real question, why were some names unspeakable, some secret, and some whispered only on the deathbed? Perhaps the answer lies in the very nature of language itself. When you speak a word, a concept in your mind transforms into sound waves and is shared with another mind. Is this, in a sense, magic? Making the invisible thought visible, transferable, enabling it to intervene in reality. Sound waves vibrate in the air, move the eardrum, stimulate the auditory cortex of the brain, and suddenly an image in your head comes alive in someone else's mind. Telepathy? I don't think so, but remarkably close. Ancient peoples noticed this, and they placed this awareness at the center of their cosmologies. Language was not merely communication, it was the instrument of creation, the vehicle of power, the expression of the sacred. In ancient Babylon, the supreme god Marduk was known by 50 names, and this was no mere honorific abundance. Each name defined a specific cosmic function, a distinct power, a particular sphere of divine authority. The Babylonians believed that to invoke the correct name was to access the corresponding power. 50 names they gave him, great as 50 gods, 50 names making his power supreme. These names were not random designations. Asarluhi, the god who gives light, who illuminates. Tutu, the recreator, the restorative power who can make anew what has been destroyed. Nibiru, the ferryman of heaven and earth, the pivot point that holds the cosmos together, identified with the planet Jupiter. Lugal de Mirankia, king of the gods of heaven and earth, the celestial sovereign. Shazu, knower of hearts, who sees into the interior of all beings. Each name was a title, an authority, a gateway to a particular manifestation of divine power. Babylonian priests memorized these 50 names with meticulous care. When a priest intoned a specific name, he was invoking that aspect of Marduk. If you sought justice, you would invoke Marduk's name as judge. If you needed rain for your crops, you would call upon his storm name. If you desired victory in battle, his warrior name. The name was the access code, the key that opened the door to divine power. The choice of 50 is significant. 50 was traditionally the sacred number of Enlil, the supreme god of the older Sumerian pantheon. By assigning 50 names to Marduk, the Babylonians were signaling that he had absorbed and superseded Enlil's authority, that all the ancient powers now resided in him. In Mesopotamia, each great god had a numerical equivalent. Anu possessed 60, Enlil 50, Ea 40. Names and numbers formed an integrated system of cosmic accounting. This logic permeated every corner of ancient Mesopotamia. Inanna, Ishtar, Shamash, all the great deities possessed multiple names because they possessed multiple aspects, and each aspect required its own mode of approach. That mode was the name. The wrong name opens the wrong door. The wrong door yields no answer. The Mesopotamians understood what later magicians would formalize. Precision matters. The universe responds to specificity, not vagueness. In the Islamic tradition, Allah possesses 99 names, al-Asma al-Husna, the most beautiful names. These names appear throughout the Quran and the Hadith literature, and they stand at the center of theological discourse, mystical practice, and everyday worship for over 1 billion Muslims worldwide. Al-Rahman, the infinitely merciful, whose compassion encompasses all creation without distinction between believer and unbeliever. Al-Rahim, the especially compassionate, whose particular tenderness is reserved for the faithful in this world and the next. Al-Malik, the sovereign king, the owner of all dominion, the ruler of the entire universe. Al-Qudus, the most holy, absolutely transcendent and free from all imperfection. Al-Salam, the source of peace, the giver of tranquility and wholeness. Al-Mumin, the inspirer of faith, the guarantor of security, who keeps his promises. Al-Muhaymin, the guardian, the protector, the overseer who watches over all. Al-Aziz, the almighty, possessing invincible power. Al-Jabbar, the compeller who enforces his will. Al-Mutakibir, the greatest, the one to whom alone true grandeur belongs.
And the list continues. Al-Khaliq, the creator. Al-Bari, the evolver. Al-Musawir, the fashioner of forms. Al-Ghaffar, the repeatedly forgiving. Al-Qahar, the subduer. Al-Wahhab, the generous bestower. Al-Razak, the provider. Al-Fattah, the opener who removes obstacles. Al-Alim, the all-knowing. Al-Kabid, the constrictor. Al-Basit, the expander. Al-Hafiz, the preserver. Al-Rafi, the exalter. Al-Muiz, the bestower of honor. Al-Muzil, the humiliator. Each name expresses a different attribute, a different aspect of the divine nature. But note carefully, these are not parts of God. If Allah is one, and the declaration of divine unity, Tawheed, is Islam's central doctrine, then these names are different reflections of a single reality, like white light passing through a prism and separating into the spectrum. One light, 7 colors. One God, 99 names. The multiplicity of names does not compromise divine unity. Rather, it reveals the infinite richness that human minds can only glimpse through partial views. Muslims count these names on prayer beads, repeating them in dhikr, the practice of remembrance and invocation. To recite a name is to contemplate that attribute, to meditate upon that aspect of divine reality. The name you choose when praying matters. If you seek healing, you invoke Ash-Shafi, the healer. If you need provision, Ar-Razak, the provider. If you seek forgiveness, Al-Ghaffar, the forgiver. If you need strength, Al-Qawi, the strong. Name selection is prayer strategy. It determines which door you enter, which face of the divine you approach. A famous hadith states, Allah has 99 names, 100 minus 1. Whoever ihsa of them shall enter paradise. The word ihsa is contested. Some scholars interpret it as memorization, others as understanding and internalization, others still as living by the ethics implied by each name. To know Al-Rahman is to be merciful. To know As-Sabur, the patient, is to be patient yourself. The names are not a list to memorize, but an ethical program to embody. And the 100th name? In some Sufi traditions, there exists a hidden 100th name, Al-Ism Al-Azam, the greatest name. Whoever knows this name can open any door, unlock any secret, have any prayer answered. Some traditions say that the Prophet knew it, and that certain saints have inherited this knowledge. This belief is not unique to Islam. The concept of a secret name of ultimate power appears across cultures. Knowledge of the name is knowledge of power, and the greatest power must be most deeply hidden. In Hinduism, the Vishnu Sahasranama, the 1,000 names of Vishnu, is a sacred text meant to be recited daily. It appears in the Anusasana Parva section of the great epic Mahabharata as one of the final teachings given by the dying patriarch Bhishma to King Yudhishthira. Lying upon a bed of arrows awaiting the auspicious moment for his death, the venerable elder explains how to honor the supreme God, and the answer is to enumerate and recite his 1,000 names.
Keshava, Narayana, Madhava, Govinda, Vishnu, Madhusudana. Each name evokes an aspect of the god, a story, a battle, a victory, a blessing. Keshava, he of beautiful hair, radiant and alluring. Narayana, the refuge of all beings, the final shelter. Govinda, the protector of cows, a name particularly associated with Krishna, Vishnu's most beloved avatar. Madhusudana, the slayer of the demon Madhu. And on it continues through 1,000 names. Reciting the 1,000 names is no casual exercise. It is a rigorous meditation practice. Each morning, during the Brahma Muhurta, the auspicious hour before dawn, the devotee sits before the deity's image and pronounces each name deliberately. Each name is like a bead on a mala or rosary. You turn it, speak it, internalize it. The practice can take hours, but the point is not speed, it is immersion. Each name requires a pause, a moment of contemplation, the visualization of that particular quality or deed. However, in the Hindu tradition, the matter extends beyond mere names. Sound itself is sacred. The concept of mantra rests upon the power of sonic vibration. The Sanskrit word breaks down to man and tra, mind or instrument or protection. A mantra is a sound formula that protects, directs, and transforms the mind. Pronouncing the correct syllables in the correct tones activates cosmic energies. The Gayatri Mantra stands among Hinduism's most sacred formulas. Om Bhur Bhuva Swa, Tat Savitur Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yona Prachodayat. This invocation to Savitri, the solar deity, requests illumination, wisdom, and inspiration. For thousands of years, millions of people have recited these syllables every day, and each recitation is an attempt to establish a cosmic connection, to align human consciousness with divine radiance. Sound waves are not merely agitations of air molecules. They resonate with the fundamental frequencies of the universe. Modern science confirms that sound has physical effects. Cymatic experiments show sound waves creating complex geometric patterns in water and sand. Studies demonstrate that certain music can influence plant growth, alter human brainwave states, binaural beats, even affect cellular structure. Ancient Hindus intuited this truth through experience, observation, and interior practice. The power of mantras is not an arbitrary superstition, but a sophisticated grasp of sound's physical reality, formulated in a different vocabulary, but pointing toward the same phenomenon. Sanskrit itself was considered the perfect language, Deva Bhasha, the speech of the gods. Its grammatical rules were believed to have divine origin. Panini's Ashtadhyayi, composed in the 4th century BCE, was the world's first systematic grammar treatise, and it codified Sanskrit as a language of precision and cosmic correspondence. The etymology of every word, every root, every suffix, every sound shift carries meaning. Language was not a random communication tool, but a reflection of the universe's very structure, a map of reality encoded in syllables. In Norse mythology, Odin was the supreme god, but he was never known by a single name. The Eddas and the sagas record approximately 150 different epithets: Grimnir, the masked one, the hooded one; Ygg, the terrible; Bolverk, worker of evil, bringer of calamity; Hungagud, the god of the hanged; Aldafodr, the father of all; Hrafnagud, the raven god; Sigtyr, the god of victory; Valfodr, the father of the slain; Verakir, the god of men; Gautr, the god of the Geats. In Grimnismal, one of the most important poems of the Poetic Edda, Odin himself recites his names. Imprisoned in the hall of King Geirroth, suspended between two fires, left to starve for 8 days as a torture victim, he finally reveals his identity. Grimnir is my name, for I came in a hood. Ygg they called me, for all who saw me were filled with terror. Hungagud am I, for I hung 9 nights on Yggdrasil. Each name is a story. God of the Hanged refers to Odin's self-sacrifice. He hung himself on the world tree Yggdrasil, pierced himself with his own spear Gungnir, and hung there for 9 nights in agony. In that extreme ordeal, he looked down into the waters below and glimpsed the runes, the first letters, the first magic, the first wisdom. He seized them with a scream and fell. That is the origin of runic knowledge. Bolverk refers to his theft of the mead of poetry from the giant Suttungur. Assuming the form of a serpent, Odin bored through a mountain, seduced the giant's daughter, drank the precious mead, transformed into an eagle, and flew back to Asgard with the gift of poetry for gods and mortals. Each name commemorates an adventure, a sacrifice, a cunning acquisition of power. Odin's multitude of names also served a practical purpose: concealment. In the legends, Odin wanders the world in disguise, entering human communities to test their hospitality and wisdom. He appears as an elderly traveler in a broad-brimmed hat and gray cloak, knocks on doors, asks questions, rewards the generous, and punishes the stingy. And each time he uses a different name: Hrani, Yalk, Herjan, Svidur. To reveal one's name is to reveal one's identity. To conceal one's name is to protect one's power. Odin is the god of masks, of transformations, of hidden identities, the archetypal trickster who holds wisdom precisely because he moves through all worlds without being fixed to any. The power of names appears elsewhere in Norse tradition. To give a newborn child a name was to assign a destiny. If a child received the name of a deceased ancestor, it was believed that a bond formed with that ancestor's spirit. Some scholars suggest the ancestor's soul actually transferred to the child, granting something of the old person's characteristics and fate. To change one's name was to change one's identity. A freed slave took a new name to mark a new life. In some legends, altering a name could alter fate itself. Runes are also significant in this context. Runic letters were not merely an alphabet. Each rune embodied a concept, a power, a secret. Fehu represented wealth, Urus strength and vital force, Thurisaz protection and the power of giants, Ansus speech, wisdom, and Odin himself. To know runes, to read them, to write them, to pronounce them, these were acts of magic. Name, letter, sound, writing, all carried power, all demanded careful handling. One of ancient Egypt's most powerful myths tells how Isis obtained the secret name of Ra. This story provides the clearest illustration of the formula to know the name equals to possess power, and it underlies the entire Egyptian magical tradition. Ra, the sun god, was the ruler of the universe. Each day he boarded his solar bark and traversed the sky, bringing light and life to mortals. But Ra was growing old. Even gods age, at least in Egyptian mythology. With age comes weakness, form deteriorates, power wanes. And one day, saliva dripped from the elderly Ra's mouth and fell upon the earth. Isis, goddess of magic, mistress of wisdom, she who sees with her tongue, meaning she perceives through words, through spells, gathered this spittle. It contained a portion of the divine god's divine essence, his DNA, if you will, assuming gods had such things. Isis mixed this essence with sacred earth and fashioned a serpent in her hands, no ordinary snake, but one created from the god's own substance, whose venom could affect even the divine. She placed the serpent on the path that Ra traveled each day. The route of the solar bark across the sky was fixed and predictable. The serpent waited. When Ra approached, it struck, bit him, and slithered away. The poison spread through the divine essence. The god of gods, the lord of the sun, writhed in agony. Fire burned him, ice froze him, his bones melted, his heart stopped and then beat again, only to bring more pain. Ra summoned the gods. All came, but none could help. No remedy worked, no spell could neutralize the venom. Then Isis arrived, calm, knowing, expectant. "I can heal you," she said, "but there is a condition. You must tell me your true name." Ra resisted. He enumerated many of his names. "I am Khepri in the morning, Ra at noon, Atum at evening." These were his names everyone knew. "I made the heavens, raised the mountains, caused the Nile to flow." These were his deeds, not his name. The poison continued spreading. The agony intensified exponentially.
Finally, unable to endure, Ra whispered his true name directly into Isis's heart, silently, where none could hear. And at that moment, Isis became the most powerful magician in existence. To know Ra's true name was to access Ra's power. She could now pronounce the mightiest magical formulas. No spell was closed to her, no secret hidden from her any longer. In this myth, the name is the essence itself. A being's true name is its true identity, and whoever knows this identity gains control over that being. In Egyptian magical practice, summoning a god, a demon, or a spirit required knowing its true name. Ren, name, was considered one of the 5 or 7 components of the human soul. If someone knew your name, they could access your soul. Magic performed with the wrong name would fail, or worse, might summon the wrong entity entirely. Long before the Greek philosophers articulated their concept of logos, the ancient Egyptians had developed a remarkable understanding of language's creative power. In Memphis, the ancient capital, the patron god of craftsmen, Ptah, was associated with a profound theological insight, the power of the heart, thought, and the tongue, speech, to shape reality. The Memphis theology, partially preserved on the Shabaka stone, expresses this principle: conception in the heart, followed by articulation through the tongue. The heart was the seat of thought in Egyptian understanding, not the brain, which was considered unimportant. The tongue was the instrument of expression. Heart conceives, tongue expresses, and expression becomes existence. Heart and tongue. For the Egyptians, these were the twin instruments of power. This theology predates the Greek concept of logos by centuries. Logos, word, reason, order, proportion, would later become the fundamental principle of the universe in Greek thought. Heraclitus was among the first thinkers to articulate the concept. The Stoics developed it as cosmic reason. But the same insight existed in Egypt much earlier. This was not abstract philosophy, it had practical consequences. To speak was to participate in reality shaping. To speak a god's name was to summon that god's presence. In funerary texts, to speak the name of the deceased was to keep them alive in some essential way. Speech gave being, and this principle extended to every Egyptian who prayed, who blessed, who cursed. Across the Abrahamic traditions, divine speech carries absolute power. When God speaks, reality responds. This is not metaphor, it is theology at its most fundamental. In the Hebrew tradition, the creative word, dabar, signifies both word and thing. Speech and reality are linguistically fused.
When the Hebrew Bible describes divine commands, it emphasizes their immediate efficacy. God speaks, and it is so. This understanding of language as fundamentally powerful explains why oaths are sacred. To swear by God is to make God your witness. Curses are dangerous. Evil words may manifest in reality. Prayer is potent. The right words, reaching the divine ear, are answered. Spoken words cannot be retracted because speech is the crystallization of will, and will shapes reality.
In Islam, the power of divine speech reaches its ultimate expression. Allah's word is not like the words of created beings. Our words are mere vibrations in air. His word is will itself. His will is power. His power is absolute. No obstacle, no delay, no resistance is possible against the divine command. The Gospel of John takes this understanding in a unique direction. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here, the Word, Logos, is not merely God's creative power, but is identified with the divine nature itself. Christianity further identifies this Logos with Jesus, the Word made flesh, divine speech incarnated in human form. This understanding of language as fundamentally powerful explains the significance accorded to words in Abrahamic traditions. Oaths are sacred. To swear by God is to make God your witness. Curses are dangerous. Evil words spoken from the mouth may manifest in reality. Prayer is potent. The right words reaching the divine ear are answered. Spoken words cannot be retracted because speech is the crystallization of will, and will shapes reality. In Hebrew, the name of God is written with 4 letters: Yod, He, Vav, He, YHWH, YHWH, the Tetragrammaton, the 4-letter name. And this name, according to ancient tradition, is never pronounced aloud. The Tetragrammaton appears approximately 6,800 times in the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. It occurs on virtually every page, in every chapter, in every narrative. Yet when a Jew reads this name, the voice shifts. Instead of YHWH, the reader says Adonai, my Lord, or Hashem, the name. The actual name is too holy to be spoken by mortal lips. Why this prohibition? Several explanations exist. First, the name is sacred, the mouth profane. God's name emerging from an ordinary human mouth diminishes its sanctity, or rather, the intimate contact between the sacred and the profane is dangerous both to the speaker and to the holy. Second, to speak the name unnecessarily is to use it in vain, lashav, violating the 3rd commandment's prohibition against taking God's name in vain. Third, to know the name might give the knower a kind of power over God, and even this thought is intolerable.
But this prohibition was not universal or eternal. In the ancient period, the name was pronounced in certain contexts: in the temple, on Yom Kippur, by the high priest, in special rituals. When the name was spoken, the congregation would prostrate themselves. Over time, the prohibition expanded. The temple was destroyed, the ritual vanished, the rule of silence hardened into absolute law. And the correct pronunciation was lost. Today, we do not know with certainty how Yahweh was pronounced. Yahweh? This is the most widely accepted academic reconstruction, but it remains a scholarly guess. Jehovah? This is actually a medieval error. The vowel marks of Adonai were placed beneath the consonants Yahweh as a reminder to substitute the former for the latter, and Christian readers unfamiliar with the convention misread the hybrid as a single word. The original sound is lost, perhaps irrecoverably. This concept of an unpronounceable name appears in other cultures as well. In some African traditions, the god's true name is known only to priests and never spoken aloud. In certain Native American cultures, a person's true name is kept secret. The name used in daily life differs from the sacred name. In fairy tales, like Rumpelstiltskin, to learn a being's name is to gain power over it. The meaning of Yahweh is also debated. The most common interpretation connects it to the verb to be, haya, suggesting he who is or he who causes to be, the bestower of existence. In Exodus, when Moses asks for God's name at the burning bush, God responds, Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I am who I am, or I will be what I will be. Existence itself is the name. God is indefinable, unlimited, uncategorizable, yet still somehow named, and that name is the doorway to the mystery that encompasses all being. The Kabbalistic tradition deepens this further. The 4 letters of Yahweh correspond to 4 worlds, 4 elements, 4 seasons, 4 levels of reality. Yod, the smallest letter, the initial spark, wisdom. He, breath, understanding, expansion. Vav, connection, the pillar, 6 dimensions. Final He, completion, kingdom, manifestation. The name is a map of the cosmos itself, a microcosm of all structure. In Hinduism and Buddhism, before all words there exists a single syllable, Om, or more precisely written, Aum, O-U-M.
Om is the sound of the universe, the vibration that existed before creation, manifested with creation, and continues after creation, the cosmic background hum. Imagine a frequency spreading through space since the Big Bang, the first explosive moment of cosmic origin. Hindu mystics heard this sound in meditation, in silence, in deep practice, and they called it Om. The Hindu sacred texts, the Upanishads, describe Om as the symbol of Brahman, Brahman being the absolute reality, the source and destination of everything, pure consciousness, limitless being. The Mandukya Upanishad is particularly devoted to Om. This brief text spends its entirety explaining the cosmic significance of this single syllable. Om has 3 sounds, A, U, Ma. A represents creation, the action of Brahma, beginning, birth, expansion. U represents preservation, the protection of Vishnu, continuity, balance, life. Ma represents transformation or destruction, the power of Shiva, ending, death, rebirth. 3 sounds unite 3 phases of the universe, 3 gods, 3 principles. The Trimurti, the Hindu triad, is compressed into 1 syllable. And the final silence, the moment when sound ceases, when Ma dissolves on the lips, represents transcendence, beyond concepts, ultimate reality. That moment is Brahman itself. Word ends, sound ends, thought ends, and what remains is pure existence, the ground of all being. Chanting Om is a meditation practice. One takes a deep breath. The Ah sound rises from the abdomen, you feel the vibration in your belly. The U sound passes through the throat, you feel the vibration in your chest. The M sound closes on the lips, you feel the vibration in your head. This physical process mirrors the cosmic process, creation, preservation, dissolution. The body is a microcosm of the universe. Practitioners feel the vibration that sound creates throughout their bodies, not just with the ear, but with bones, muscles, organs. And this vibration connects them to the fundamental frequency of the universe. The boundary between the individual self, Atman, and universal reality, Brahman, dissolves in the pronunciation of Om. Modern physics tells us the universe consists of vibrations, quantum fields, string theory, the wave nature of particles. Ancient Hindus expressed this truth in a different language, a different framework. The universe is sound, vibration, energy in form. Om is the essence of this universal vibration. The 2 explanations are not identical, but both converge on the point that the foundation of reality is vibration. When we journey to the Far East, we encounter an unexpected reversal.
China's ancient wisdom tradition, Taoism, acknowledges the power of naming, but precisely for this reason draws attention to the limits of naming.
When we journey to the Far East, we encounter an unexpected reversal. China's ancient wisdom tradition, Taoism, acknowledges the power of naming, but precisely for this reason draws attention to the limits of naming. The opening line of the Tao Te Ching is one of the most famous paradoxes in the history of philosophy. The Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. The name that can be named is not the true name. Lao Tzu, in his very first breath, proclaims the inadequacy of language. Ultimate reality, the Tao, the way, cannot be grasped with words. The moment you name it, you limit it. The moment you limit it, you lose it. This represents a radical departure from other traditions. Marduk's 50 names granted power. Allah's 99 names brought nearness. Ra's secret name provided control. But Taoism declares the highest thing precedes naming. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. Creation begins with naming, but before creation lies eternal silence, namelessness. This is why Taoist sages speak little. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. Silence is the mark of wisdom. Many words mean departure from the Tao. The deepest truths cannot be expressed in words. They can only be pointed to through poetry, paradox, and silence. When we cross to Japan, we encounter a different but related concept, kotodama, the spirit of words. In the Shinto tradition, every spoken word carries a spirit. Words do not merely convey meaning, they carry energy, power, a spiritual presence. Beautiful words bring beautiful outcomes. Ugly words bring ugly outcomes. This belief has deeply shaped Japanese culture. The careful selection of words, the avoidance of negative expressions, the preference for indirect speech, these are everyday manifestations of kotodama belief. A Japanese person avoids saying the word death directly. Instead of fourth floor, other terms are used because for, she, sounds identical to death, she. Words can summon reality. In Shinto rituals, norito, prayer formulas, hold special importance. When the priest addresses the gods, every word, every syllable is pronounced with care. The wrong word spoils the ritual. The right word pleases the gods. Taoism and Shinto approach the power of language from different angles. Taoism emphasizes language's limits. Shinto emphasizes language's spirit. Together, they shape the Far East's approach to words, neither unlimited trust nor total rejection, but deep respect and attention. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus recounts a remarkable experiment. The Egyptian pharaoh Psammetichus, who ruled during the 7th century BCE in the 26th dynasty, was asking a question. Which language is humanity's oldest? Were the Egyptians the first speakers, or the Phrygians, or some other people? Every nation claimed to be the most ancient.
The pharaoh designed an experiment. This was no ordinary experiment. By today's ethical standards, it was horrifying. 2 newborn babies were given to a shepherd. The shepherd was forbidden from speaking in the baby's presence. No one was to speak to them. The babies would live with goats, hearing no human voice. And the first word they uttered would reveal humanity's natural, original language. The logic ran thus. If language is learned, the babies would make goat sounds. But if humans possess an innate, natural language, given by the gods, originating at creation, hardwired into human nature, that language would emerge from the untaught children. Nothing had been taught, no influence exerted. Pure human nature would manifest itself. 2 years later, the shepherd brought news to the pharaoh. The babies were saying something like, Bekos. Herodotus relates that the pharaoh investigated and discovered that Bekos meant bread in Phrygian. The conclusion? The Phrygians were more ancient than even the Egyptians. The pharaoh accepted this judgment. Of course, this story is almost certainly legend rather than history. The far more likely explanation is that the children were imitating the goat's ba sound. Bekos might be a humanized version of goat bleating. But the story itself is significant. Ancient peoples wondered about the origin of language, where language came from, what the first word was, how speech began. These were philosophical, theological, even political questions that occupied the greatest minds. Modern linguistics cannot identify the first language. Language existed before writing and left no archaeological trace. But it does investigate the evolutionary origin of human language. Approximately 100,000 years ago, the modern human brain evolved with language capacity. Larynx structure, tongue musculature, Broca's and Wernicke's areas in the brain all became optimized for speech. Humans are born to speak. Noam Chomsky's universal grammar theory proposes that language is hardwired into the human mind. All humans, regardless of culture, are born with the capacity to learn language. Language is part of human nature, an evolutionary adaptation, a cognitive module. A baby, even without deliberate instruction, begins speaking at a certain age. Pasamidicus's experiment wouldn't work because there is no natural language, but the capacity for language is natural, innate, fundamental to what we are. And perhaps the most intriguing question is, what might the first word have been? A cry of pain? A warning signal? Survival calls like danger or food? A mother's call to her baby? Lullabies, comfort sounds? The origin of language is the origin of humanity, and this origin carries biological, cultural, and, in the eyes of ancient peoples, metaphysical depths. In the ancient world, naming a child was not an arbitrary choice, it was destiny assignment. The name would affect who the child became, what they would do, how they would live. For this reason, name selection involved consulting priests, studying horoscopes, inquiring of the gods.
In Rome, the saying nomen est omen has survived to the present day. The name is the omen. If a child received the name Victor, conqueror, victory was expected. Felix, fortunate, would attract luck. Lucius, light, would live a bright life, or so it was hoped. The name was simultaneously prophecy, prayer, and aspiration. In Jewish tradition, the naming ceremony for male children coincides with circumcision, Brit Milah, covenant of circumcision. At this ceremony, the child receives a Hebrew name, which is considered the true name. Diaspora Jews often used a name in the local language as well, but the formal name, the name on Jewish documents, was Hebrew. In prayers, when called to the Torah, in the marriage contract, ketubah, in all official religious contexts, the Hebrew name was used. If the name of a deceased ancestor was given, that ancestor's spirit continued in the child, according to some traditions. In Ashkenazi tradition, names of deceased relatives are given. In Sephardic tradition, even living grandparents' names may be bestowed. The name is a bridge across generations, connecting the living to the dead and the dead to the living. In Islam, too, name selection is emphasized. Giving children names with beautiful meanings is encouraged. Abdullah, servant of Allah, or Abdul Rahman, servant of the All-Merciful. Names with negative meanings are to be avoided. Hadith literature records that the prophets sometimes changed names. Names carrying bad meanings or arrogant connotations were replaced with more appropriate ones. In Christian tradition, the baptismal name was typically a saint's name, and that saint became the child's protector, model, and intercessor. If named Peter, the child entered St. Peter's protection and was expected to emulate his virtues. The name was an invisible bond connecting the named to the holy exemplar. In ancient Egypt, the name, Ren, was one of the 5 or 7 components of the human soul. The name was immortal.
Even if the body decayed, as long as the name lived, the dead person lived in some essential way. For this reason, names were written repeatedly in pyramids, tombs, and monuments. And when revenge came, the enemy's name was erased, damnatio memoriae, damnation of memory. Pharaoh Hatshepsut's name was chiseled from many monuments by her successor Thutmose III. Akhenaten's name was systematically erased after he was declared a heretic. If the name was destroyed, the person was destroyed. Even in the modern world, changing one's name means changing one's identity. A married woman takes her husband's surname, becoming part of a new family. An immigrant adapts their name in a new country or changes it entirely, part of assimilation. An artist takes a stage name, separating real self from artistic persona. Transgender individuals change names during transition, registering their new identities legally and socially. The name is part of legal, social, and psychological reality, not merely a label, but a constituent of personhood. The sanctity of language is not limited to speech, it extends to writing. In many cultures, the writing system itself was considered divine in origin, and letters, even without sound, carry power.
In Egypt, hieroglyphs were called Medu Neter, words of the gods. Thoth, the ibis-headed god, invented writing and taught it to humanity. Thoth was also the god of magic, wisdom, and calculation, and writing was his greatest gift. In a Platonic dialogue, the Egyptian king Thomas tells Thoth that writing will actually weaken memory. But from Thoth's perspective, writing immortalizes knowledge, preserving it beyond any single human lifespan. Each hieroglyph, beyond being a symbol, carried inherent power. Hieroglyphs carved on temple walls were not merely texts to be read, they were considered active power sources. When a god's name was inscribed on a wall, that god resided there in some way. Writing a prayer meant the prayer was continuously recited. Even if the person departed, the writing continued its work. For this reason, the hieroglyphs of certain dangerous words, snake, crocodile, enemy, were deliberately broken or mutilated. When drawing the serpent symbol, the head or tail was intentionally left incomplete because a drawn snake might become real. Written danger could summon danger, but an incomplete symbol was powerless. Writing shaped reality, therefore writing required caution. In funerary texts, the pyramid texts, the coffin texts, and the Book of the Dead, the deceased's name was written repeatedly. As long as the name remained written, the dead person lived. To erase the name was to destroy the person utterly. Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic king who imposed the worship of the single god Aten, had his name systematically chiseled from monuments after his death. To erase him from memory was to send him to oblivion. In Hebrew, too, letters themselves are considered sacred. The Hebrew alphabet, Aleph-Bet, consists of 22 letters, and each letter carries a numerical value. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, and so forth. These numerical values form the basis of gematria, the mystical system of interpretation. Words with the same numerical value share hidden connections. For example, the Hebrew word for life, chai, has the value 18. Therefore, 18 is an auspicious number, and charitable donations are often given in multiples of 18. In Kabbalah, creation occurs through letters. God combined letters to create the universe. The Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation, one of Kabbalah's oldest texts, explains this cosmological language theory. 22 foundation letters. With them, God carved, formed, and created everything that is. Each letter corresponds to an element, a direction, a period of time, a dimension of reality. The universe is a fabric woven from letters. Reality is a text.
In Islam, Arabic holds a unique status as the language of the Quran. Translation of the Quran is possible, but the translation is not Quran. The Quran exists only in its Arabic original. The letters, syllables, and words themselves are sacred. Memorizing the Quran, becoming a Hafiz, means preserving not merely the meaning, but the very sounds of divine revelation. This is why tajweed, the art of correct recitation, is so important. Reading the Quran is like singing from a musical score. Every sound, every elongation, every pause, every connection follows precise rules. To mispronounce is to distort the text. To read correctly is to relive revelation, to give voice to words that originated beyond human composition.
Calligraphy, Arabic calligraphy, is the visual expression of this sanctity. When a master calligrapher's hand produces Bismillah, in the name of God, the result is not merely an aesthetic object, but the creation of a spiritual artifact. In Islamic art, figurative representation faced restrictions, but writing is omnipresent. In mosques, palaces, cemeteries, everyday objects, the visible form of the word sanctifies the space it occupies. In Hinduism, Sanskrit is regarded as the perfect language. The Vedas, the most ancient sacred texts, are composed in Sanskrit, and every syllable must be pronounced with exact correctness. A mantra's power depends on correct sound. A wrong sound corrupts the ritual, or worse, may produce inverse effects. Sanskrit's perfection lies in its precision. Every word derives from a root. Every affix carries meaning. Ambiguity is minimized. The language of the gods tolerates no vagueness. When we return from the ancient world to the present, one question remains. Are words actually powerful, or is this merely belief? The answer is perhaps both, but in a more complex way than we might suppose. Words do not directly alter the physical world. You cannot move mountains by pronouncing a word. You cannot summon lightning by uttering a name. But words change human minds, and human minds change the physical world. An indirect power, but utterly real. And perhaps this indirection does not diminish the power, rather it spreads it everywhere. Thought, word, action, reality. This chain is valid in modern psychology as well. Cognitive behavioral therapy is based on changing a person's inner speech to change their mood and behavior. The things we tell ourselves, I can do this or I cannot, affect our behavior, our performance, our outcomes. Someone who says, I am a failure, expects failure, avoids risks, cannot capitalize on opportunities, and actually fails. Someone who says, I am valuable, demands valuable treatment, carries confidence, overcomes difficulties, and actually lives a valuable life. Discourse constructs identity. Therapy rewrites discourse. The things we say to others, I love you or I hate you, shape relationships, societies, history. A leader's speech can drive millions to war. A poet's verse can inspire revolutions. A teacher's words can determine a child's entire life. Propaganda, advertising, education, therapy, diplomacy, all rely on the power of words. Ancient peoples understood this intuitively, but expressed it in mystical language. The magical power of words was actually the psychological and social power of words, scaled to cosmic dimensions. To know a name is to recognize, categorize, bring under control a being conceptually. We fear less that which we can name. We can cope with that which we have labeled. The name is the first step of control. To speak is to externalize thought, to share it, to make it part of social reality. An idea inside me, if it remains inside, is nothing. But if I speak it, it exists, in others' minds, in society's memory, in the flow of history. Language is the mechanism that bridges ideas to reality.
The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, a controversial but influential theory in linguistics, proposes that language shapes thought. The language you speak affects your perception, your categories, even your conception of time and space. In some languages, blue and green are expressed with the same word, and research shows speakers of those languages are slower at distinguishing these colors. Some languages describe direction relative to the body, left, right, others in absolute terms, north, south, and this alters spatial cognition. Perhaps words creating reality is true in this sense. Your language determines how you experience reality. How many colors do you see? How many emotions can you distinguish? How do you perceive time? All these depend, to some degree, on the categories your language provides you. In the beginning was the Word. This sentence is not merely a religious statement. Perhaps it represents one of humanity's deepest intuitions. Language is the essence of being human. To speak, to think, to understand, to be understood. These are what distinguish us from animals, what makes civilization possible, what create history itself. A bee dances, communicating the location of food, but cannot invent new dances. A dolphin whistles, communicating with its pod, but cannot discuss past or future. A chimpanzee learns signs, expressing simple wants, but cannot debate abstract concepts. Only humans ask, what existed in the beginning? Only humans wonder, what will happen in the end? Only humans bring into existence non-existent things, gods, numbers, justice, through speech. Perhaps ancient peoples, when they believed in the magical power of words, were not exaggerating. Perhaps the power of words is deeper, more real, more fundamental than we assumed. Marduk's 50 names, Allah's 99 names, Vishnu's 1,000 names. These are different cultures' ways of expressing the power of language. Each name is a door. Each name is an invocation. Each name is a bond. Ra's secret name, the unpronounceable name of YHWH, these are reminders that language must be handled with respect, care, even fear. The name is sacred because existence is sacred. The name is dangerous because power is dangerous. Ptah's heart and tongue, the formula of kun fayakun, these express language's creative, world-shaping power. Thought transforms into speech. Speech transforms into action. Action transforms into reality. This chain is valid in mythology, in psychology, in history, in everyday life.
The vibration of Om, the perfection of Sanskrit, these reflect the cosmic importance of sound, letter, syllable. The universe is vibration, wave, energy, and form. Om is the attempt to contain universal vibration within the human mouth. And the experiment of Psammaticus reminds us the origin of language is the origin of humanity. What was the first word? We do not know. Perhaps a cry, perhaps a song, perhaps a name. But that word, whatever it was one of the first steps toward becoming human. The speaking ape became the thinking ape. The thinking ape became the civilization-building human. Today, words remain powerful. A vow, a promise, an insult, a compliment, each changes reality. We unite through marriage vows, separate through divorce pronouncements. The judge's guilty sends us to prison, innocent sets us free. The doctor's cancer devastates our world, clear lets us be reborn. Words construct social reality. Politicians build power through words, bending concepts like freedom, justice, security to their purposes. Poets create beauty through words, arranging ordinary language in ways that move hearts centuries later. Scientists describe nature through words, giving names like atom, gene, quark to make the invisible world visible. Lovers forge bonds through words. I love you is 3 words, but among the most powerful formulas in the universe. And silence. Silence is powerful too, perhaps more powerful than speech. Some things, when unsaid, carry greater meaning. The unspoken word hangs in the air, fills with expectation, creates tension. Therapists know this.
When the client falls silent, they stand at the threshold of the most important thing. Mystics know this. God speaks in silence, manifests in emptiness. Zen Buddhism teaches the sound of silence, mu. Kabbalah says the space between letters is as meaningful as the letters themselves. Speech is sacred, silence is sacred. Today, in the digital age, words spread more rapidly and abundantly than ever before. A tweet reaches millions in seconds. A viral video communicates across language barriers. Every day, trillions of words are produced, sent, read, forgotten. In this abundance, has the value of words diminished, or has it concentrated differently? On one hand, information pollution, fake news, hate speech. On the other, global solidarity, instant communication, dialogue crossing borders. Words remain powerful, but now everyone possesses that power. And in the age of artificial intelligence, a new question arises. Can machines speak? An algorithm produces words, constructs sentences, writes texts. But is this speech in the sense ancient peoples meant? Creative, transformative, carrying sacred power? Or merely imitation, pattern matching, statistical prediction? Does logos belong only to humans, or is it a universal principle? The answers to these questions may require us to redefine what speech even is. Perhaps the sentence, "In the beginning was the Word," is not so much a statement of faith as an observation, a discovery, a truth articulated. The Word is powerful. It always was. It always will be. And we, as speaking, writing, narrating, listening beings, are both the users and the carriers of this power. A name, a word, a syllable. From the laments for Tammuz to today's poetry, from Marduk's 50 names to Allah's 99, from Ptah's creative tongue to the command kun fayakun, humanity has always known language shapes the world, and now, tonight, you too carry this knowledge. This is the beginning and also the end.